Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We're back again with another 30 days of thought. You notice on video, I've lost the cover to my book because the purpose of 30 days of thought is to read, to think, write, to develop. Well, the purpose is to uncover the genius of the reader, right? And how that's done is to read, to think, write, to develop, listen to hear what is unsaid, speak to let go, read an excerpt. So we're on page 137 today. There's dozens of excerpts in the book. You read them, you write your thoughts in the book. That's why mine's falling apart here. It's probably the umpteenth go around. Film a video and watch yourself after. Preparation's key in it. Before I shoot, I'm going down the rabbit hole. I might as well share the quote for today's episode. Quote, I have made conflict masked as passion my mate, and in that I am my own soulmate. I am in love with myself. How damned am I? Today is soulmate, 30 days of thought. So the purpose is to uncover the genius of the purpose of 30 days, to uncover the genius within of the reader. How is that? How does that take place? It's the idea of the reading, which inspires the reader's thoughts, to the writing, to refine them, to test them, to separate the wheat from the chaff. The challenge to record invokes preparation. It invokes contemplation. It invokes the tribe. It invokes the other, the they, because now once it's out there, whether it's in the written form, others can read it. If it's in the spoken form, you can watch this on YouTube. You can listen to it on the Culture Matters podcast. There's another level of accountability which has a relationship with the self. And today we're talking about the self. If we're talking about soul, we're talking about the idea of soulmate. And that last quote, this is a troubled, disintegrated, fleeting writer, thinker, youth, entrepreneur, risk taker, problem solver, trying to figure that out, writing that excerpt all those years ago. So what is soulmate? And where do we go from here, right? You look at 30 days of thought as a process of integration, as a process of um, integrity building or a building up, the reflecting, the reading, the reflecting, the writing, the preparation that presupposes the recording, the reflection upon watching, the recording, the actual act or meditation of speaking and sharing and the inclusion of the group. Who knows who's listening to this? For all I know, the world is listening to this. This is in fact, maybe that's one of the reasons why public speaking is the most, according to the I've heard this a million times. It'd be nice to check it that public speaking is the most intimidating or scary thing outside of death for people. Well, why? The attention of the crowd has an impact on ourself. It has an impact on our individuality, our identity, our survival, the very not just our survival, but our future generations, the likelihood that we'll even have future generations, as it relates to getting a mate, because that comes before future generations. Our soul has to mate for future generations to occur. So maybe public speaking is the most scary thing outside of death because it's like the long-term death, or rather, it it has an impact on long-term death or long-term life. the leader, the speaker, the people, the conquerors, the creators of this world that we remember, the people that are remembered, they've had significant impact on the world. They live beyond time and space. They live in they live in our quotes, our books, our histories. They're a part of human culture. They're a part of our identities of the future, right? Our current identities have been shaped by people of the past that are no longer living, but their legacy lives on. Their soul impacts us. The spirit of who they were, how they showed up, what they thought, how they spoke impacts us. Their deeds and their words created ripple effects throughout time that's shaped our identity. So, like this idea of soulmate, each individual ha is a soul, or is a construction, or an intermediate an iteration of soul. And for the future physical form to occur of that soul, like let's say children and children's children, generations, there's going to be a mating process, a mated union. And and what's the value in that for that soul? What's the value of that, or for that individual? In a sense, 30 days of thought, right? Its purpose to uncover your genius as the reader, writer, listener, speaker, listener, and so on. It's a it's like an external accountability medium, an added supplement to that mating process, to the for right or how, how ready are we to have a soul mate if our soul isn't mated, if there's a certain level of integration or identity alignment to even or us think of the values framework, or the specific narrative that one is living out, if they're actually committed to the idea of a soul mate, of a mate. One means not all. Imposes order, imposes rigidity, it imposes discernment and decision. It's like the clear no that has a consequence over the the amount of yeses that could have been within that domain. The amount of yeses, because every day, if we have our soul mate, the mate that we dance with spiritually, emotionally, physically, psychologically, etc., etc., it's a reunion. It's a reunion every day. It's a new day. I think it was, yeah, yeah. Schopenhauer, when man copulates, the devil laughs. It's a it's a reunion every day. Copulation, copulation that has a natural outcome, which is a child, which is responsibility, which the whole group, the whole society, the whole civilization is accountable to that child's. At some level, they're accountable to the child's fruit. When man copulates, the devil laughs, because in the absence of accountability from the parents, that child will become the burden of the community. But if it's no one's job, whose job is it? Well, we know with business that if it's no one's job, whose is it? That, oh my God, that scared the living hell out of me. This air conditioning thing just went off in the backyard here. Huh. Should probably move over there. It's pretty loud. Man copulates, the devil laughs. Copulation leads, right? A physical mating, not necessarily a soul mating. Soul as in core values, commitment, uh, the alignment of no and yes, no to all other possibilities, yes to a potential, only one potential, a potential into the future. It's beyond space, and it evokes, it projects in time. It's that one relationship, that soulmate soul, individual, right? One identity, another identity in combination, iterating back and forth. It's a never ending interaction in the sense of there's one life as one in the physical form as one could perceive based on history. There's a compounding effect of goodwill that happens with that, and there's a responsibility, the ability to respond to the conflicts that naturally arise as a consequence of that mating, that natural mating, that soul mating of two people coming together and presupposing the fruit, which is the progeny, the children that are now going to need to be brought up. They're going to need to be cared for. They're going to need to be taught. They're going to they have to survive. They're vulnerable. They're naked. They're afraid. And the, 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 the parents' part of the job description, their job description implicitly is to keep them alive and to be a broker or a bridge uh, of 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 the rituals and the stories and the core values and the lessons, the knowledge necessary for that child to survive and ultimately continue the domino effect of procreation and development for future generations. There's this, and if you take the parents out, the devil laughs, right? When man copulates, the devil laughs. You take the parents out, now that child will be raised by the devil in the sense that they'll be raised by the void of order. They'll be raised in chaos. They'll be raised in infinite possibility of choice, the statistical likelihood of death and destruction, if not for them, for others. And ultimately, the devil laughs because now think about it in a company. That's where I was going earlier. When it's no one's job description, if it's everyone's job, it's no one's. It has to be clear. That's why you need an org chart for a business. It has to constantly be redeveloped and reimagined because if people don't know what's expected of them, if they don't know what they're doing, even if they know what they're doing, but they don't know what's expected, it leaves it too much into the unknown where now it breaks down communication. People succumb to fear and anxiety. They don't communicate directly. They tend to communicate indirectly and tribally, and that leads to gossip, which leads to infighting and divisiveness and lowers trust and undermines respect and leads to infighting and the yes man effect relative to those in authority, and now becomes too top down, and it starts to undermine the spirit, undermine trust, undermine activity. It lowers the likelihood of people having those aligned values because, well, anything goes. We don't even know what the truth is. We don't even know where we're going. We don't even know why we're going there. We're not even sure what the company stands for. What is our purpose? Now each individual is becoming overly self-centered, overly nihilistic, overly like deep the conflict that's necessary to lead to external creation, like the development of like material and capital and civilization ends up inverting and like crushing each individual spiritually in their soul, in their value set, and ultimately undermines the order of the organization, undermines the nature of the organization, and undermines the progression of the organization. And now it's vulnerable and it's naked, and fear will reign. What the hell does this have to do with the idea of a soulmate? Because when man copulates, the devil laughs. There's a great amount of responsibility, the ability to respond to conflict that realigns the culture. It realigns the relationship, how each party relates to one another relative to how they have to relate to the children. You take the parents out, now that child will have to be raised by the community, and that puts an undue pressure on the community. Who's responsible? Who's accountable? soulmate. Um, what are some of so you think about, I could go a lot of places with this. Um, one practical takeaway is the power to say no, the the ability to say no, the um, core values of courage and temperance, and the ability to trust and be respectful of others, and in turn be respected. Those are values that are forged in the mutual union of one and another. They're forced, they're forced, both individuals are forced to confront the contradictions that build up in each individual. Any and every individual has inherent contradictions of personality, because that'd be a long podcast. I don't know why. There's lots of philosophy or psychology around why, biology and whatever. But let's say that each individual is a work in progress with inherent contradictions, inherent problems to be solved. Life is problem solving, right? Why do businesses exist? Because they bring to market solutions to problems in the sense of products and services. Life is problem solving. Individuals, we are confronted with great problems, uh, problems that, let's say lead to physical death, and problems that, um, even just philosophical problems that make us question reality, question life, and question death, and question its meaning. And um, as we're navigating the world, we all, every person navigating the world through their own personal, subjective interpretation of that reality will have blind spots and uh, let's say working through contradiction. And one of the values of having a life partner, a spouse, the idea of the soul mate, the mated soul, the mate, the 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 yeah, the soul mate, the mated souls, are they relate to one another, and they they they're like checks and balances. There's each is responsible or able to respond at a degree of awareness, capability, innate capacity, talent, knowledge, so on, will, desire. And so each responsible individual that relates to the world and themselves through themselves are accountable to one another. They're held to account. And their good words, their good thoughts, and their good deeds compound goodwill in the community, compound trust in one another, compound. And this is the argument. It's like psychologically that some of the great psychologists have made, the Jungians and all them, and the Freudians, and the whatever you want to add, is that the individual is like each of us are moving towards our potential relative to unraveling these natural contradictions, these psychological and life contradictions, um, as we take on more skills and experiences and tools and capabilities to move into the unknown. And ultimately, regardless of how far we go into our potential as it relates to whatever economic system we're thrust into, whatever culture we're brought up in, we have a possibility and a propensity to mate and to produce offspring that will need us to be responsible for them, and will be held accountable by the culture, the society. The culture will be responsible for that fruit, if whether it's an asset or a liability on the balance sheet. And it's a hell of a lot of pressure and energy and all that. And every single person feeds energy back into the system or takes energy back out, energy back into the system or takes energy out. The value of a life partner is more than romance. They're a mirror, they're a challenger, they're a stabilizer. Their presence amplifies each of our values and tests integrity or the integration of self. As you know, in a Petersonian sense, there's many different personal realities or values, behaviors that compete for dominance of each of us because we have different impulses that serve different aims that are all necessary for survival in a natural sense. That just because something is helpful in one context doesn't mean in another context it's unhelpful. Example, it could be helpful to be able to procreate from the idea to mate and then be in a position of responsibility to take care of that child, lower the likelihood of its death and increase the likelihood of its integration into the culture. It could also be uh, unhelpful to for an individual to mate with everyone else's mates in the sense that now the society is eating itself. It's in the sense of a cooperation, the ability of these groups, these you know, what two these groups of these couplings are now competing with other couplings in the community versus cooperating towards that future aim goal of growth in an absent cancer. I don't mean the cancer that we might think of like a metaphorical cancer of the degradation of trust and and mutual respect and the breakdown of goodwill and the wellspring of resentment, the wellspring of contempt, the wellspring of these very important these in a Nietzschean sense, these sinful or sin-laden values are so necessary for movement. They're so necessary to pull the bow back so the arrow can hit the target. However, they have consequences when they're in a context that isn't a forward aim where all couplings are moving towards one destination together. It's like a company. If the if the departments of a company, which all complement one another, become siloed and are not communicating uh, proactively and cooperating, then they start to work against themselves and ultimately the organization, ultimately the shareholders, ultimately the shareholders being those that benefit from the profit, the stakeholders, the overall community. Each employee benefits from the profit as it relates to the company investing back into the organization for career advancement, job growth. Life is like that. It's a never ending staircase of cooperation and a necessary, like innate competition that's occurring, that's driving us forward. It's like certain values align with that competitive essence of our nature, that from a natural sense, and internally and socially. Yeah, we compete internally with these different we compete internally and we have to cooperate externally. That the interweaving of competition and cooperating on an individual level drives us to sacrifice our time and our space for these subjective aims that have meaning to us that ultimately uh they may not mean anything in the grand scheme of like the eternal depending, they may or may not, but in this life there's a communal benefit from all of that, from those lower order or those or what could be perceived as lower order values that complement the perceived higher order values. But it's the alignment or the stacking south to north of these values that lead to growth and actually pre pre create the pretext for meaning, the pretext for what matters, the pretext for life to continue to go on. We need that contrast, that conflict, and soulmate, the idea of mating and being mated to another soul and having to and being committed to that, there's clear value that's created from that, from an economic sense, or expressed in an economic lens, and create stability and order in a culture. And maybe inevitably there'll be a percentage of those in a culture that are not aligned with this concept, or well, it's not like it's finite or absolute. It's on some type of gradient, and there's self-deceit and deceit wrapped up in all of this. It's like, how honest, how forthright, how committed, and how mated are individuals, and for how long, right? How much. Yeah, I have to digress on that. My back hurts. Boundaries fortify values. By saying no to dysfunction or toxic attraction, we're saying yes to self-respect and clarity. The test of restraint that creates the, I there may be a true connection with coupling and the commitment, the values, the values that align with coupling and commitment, and the long-term view that's necessary even beyond life, from a I guess a metaphysical sense, and the value in economics, the value of economy, the value of stable organizations and cultures. And life is just constant contradiction and paradox. And maybe that's the value of a coupling, a relationship, or a divine union, or and what I'm attempting to do in this, well, 30 Days of Thought, that writing of soulmate is clear to me in hindsight. Someone that is attempting to just get the very basics integrated in a line, which is like the soul, the individuality, identity, self. And what relationships does the very base self, identity, soul have with the possibility of having a soul mate, being mated, and the longevity and the value creation that could come from that, both from a physical sense of progeny and children or whatever, and in a communal sense of stewardship and reputation and communal protection and growth and trust. And you know if how important is our expectations and trust. And when you meet someone, well, the no is a projection. It's like a statistical probability. It's not, you actually know what they're going to do, what they're going to say. And we need to be able to, in a civilized society, trust and respect our neighbors, but we can't trust and respect them if we can't predict them. And you can't predict everything, but we have to be able to expect enough, or think we've predicted enough to have stable emotions, stable conversations, stable convictions. And if we're not sure who we're talking to, if we're not sure, our neighbors become strangers, and strangers put us on guard. And when we're on guard, we don't trust. And when we don't trust, we don't trade. When we don't trade, we can't create. When we don't create, we destroy. And so, damn, it must be really important to have soulmates. In life, your partner's choices shape your destiny. More than most any decision. In business partnerships, you see this in business partnerships, the business partners shape one another's destinies. You know, who we partner with matters, who we marry matters. But working in middle, so any of them think that this may be a bit esoteric. The two biggest things that destroy middle market, 200,000 businesses in the US, 80% of their family owned private companies. Okay. And they lead to these are serious companies, small to big, big to small. The biggest destroyers of value are marital divorce and partnership divorce. That's what creates the opportunity for these private institutions to actually buy. A big part of what creates to buy into these companies, to invest into these companies, is the breakdown of the culture, is the breakdown of the vision, the aligned vision, is the breakdown of the aligned core values, the breakdown of the sense of mission and purpose, the breakdown of the clarity around roles and responsibilities and soul, the idea of a soul and the idea of a mate and the idea of a soul mate is absolutely relevant for creating value in business. Okay. I'm tired from this. I hope you are too. I don't hope that's kind of a weird thing to say. My personal reflection is I've grown. I think I've grown in a lot of ways from the last time I wrote this excerpt, when I wrote the excerpt, and I've regressed in others. And it's interesting to reread it and it'll be fun to reflect on this. I've said some things that I've thought before in different ways. I haven't said them before today, and it reminds me of how therapeutic, cathartic, valuable, insightful, fun, and entertaining this process can be, to read, to think, write, to develop, to listen, to hear what's unsaid, to speak, to let go, even if it's just myself. If you haven't listened to 30 Days of Thought with friends, go check that out with our regulars like Nathan Merrill, Paul Aceto, Andrew Berman, and others. And I could go on for another hour, but I've got a meeting that I've got to get to. So with that, please pick up your copy of 30 Days of Thought. We're on page 137 today, Soulmate. A lifetime may pass without any formal recognition by society of our one true love. Keep in mind, in self, without boundaries and self-respect, you'll keep mistaking chaos for passion. Some philosophers to look into on this subject, Plato's Symposium, the myth of soulmates being halves seeking union. I never read Plato's Symposium, but that's somewhat of what was discussed today, actually. The anima and animus, the inner feminine, masculine archetypes projected into partners by Carl Jung. Nietzsche's idea of eternal recurrence, why you choose this partner, this passion, this conflict for eternity. In modern psychology, attachment styles shape who we call soulmates. Please leave us a review in the Culture Matters podcast. Pick up 30 Days of Thought, and we will see you next time.